Welcome back. It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis. Ed Vopal is my guest, and Ed is a trial attorney with Habush, and Rotier up in the Green Bay office. That wasn't enough work. He took on the responsibility of being the president-elect of the Wisconsin Association for Justice. Now, at one time it was called the Wisconsin Academy of Trial Lawyers. I had that job 30 years ago, and I know what a commanding job it is, and the job hasn't changed. We're representing people, usually against corporations, almost always against insurance companies. And it's never been easy, contrary to the impression that the newspapers may give. But it got a lot tougher in January. Would you tell us about it?
Certainly. There were really two waves. One is ongoing. The first wave that Governor Walker and the legislature proposed were changes to a variety of different things: nursing home claims, product liability claims. There were other things involved in that the governor put forth and that the laws actually passed, including changing some of the evidentiary rules that apply to a courtroom. And there was a public hearing that we attended on behalf of WAJ and had witnesses attend, some of our clients and people who are victims of negligence. And the law, of course, passed very quickly. In 30 days or so, and it really affected the access to the court system and people's rights in Wisconsin. And now, as a secondary measure, the legislature is proposing a repeal of some auto insurance law changes that were made in 2009 that were very beneficial to Wisconsin consumers, really helped them understand the coverage that they had, and made it more even so that when they purchased a policy, they were getting what they paid for, George. And those changes are going to take away some of the Wisconsin consumers' rights, which is really too bad.
Well, one thing is they're trying to pass the reduction of the minimums of car insurance back to the level it was in 1980, where the cost of medical treatment has gone up 10 times in that period.
Correct. In 1982, the limits for the minimum limits for automobile insurance were $25,000, and that had existed until 2009, when it was raised to $50,000. So it was doubled over that period of time between 1982 and 2009. Medical expenses had increased 400% during that time frame. So the changes in 2009 were done to reflect the increased cost of medical care, medical supplies, pharmaceutical costs, the actual costs that people incurred when they were injured in a motor vehicle accident or other accidents. And now that's all being taken away again without really any substantial justification for why, any significant investigation as to what the costs are and whether the limits that they're now imposing, again, $25,000, actually pay for the costs that of medical care and other things like that.
Well, not only is liability insurance and car insurance a bargain in the state of Wisconsin when you compare it with other states, it's much cheaper than it is in the so-called no-fault states, where typically people only have about $10,000 in coverage. But what this has done is increase the expense of car insurance for responsible people, because now they know the probabilities are of the person that they're involved in an accident with has inadequate coverage, and so they have to take the additional burden. This is a penalty on responsible drivers. Absolutely.
There are two parts to your question. The first part, which is very interesting, is that the $25,000 limit, which now we're going to have again, as you suggest, does not really cover what the medical costs are. For instance, you take an ambulance ride to a hospital, that can be several $100s. You'd get an MRI scan or a CT scan, those can be thousands of dollars. And those medical costs increase very significantly. Part of what happened with the new law changes that are proposed, that I assume will be passed soon, is there's a portion of your insurance policy called medical payments coverage. And in 2009, the limit for medical payments coverage, or the coverage amount, was $10,000, and it's being reduced back again to $1,000, which, as you know, doesn't cover very much at all.
I know I was knocked down by a dog when I was doing a little dog training about a year ago, landed on my shoulder. I went to the emergency room and they found out I had a torn rotator cuff, and I came out with another injury, a $7,000 bill in the emergency room.
Right.
Now, how far would $1,000 go? It just wouldn't even begin to give these people an evaluation.
That's exactly right. $1,000 is almost meaningless in terms of a medical payments part of your policy, and really doesn't cover very much treatment at all. And so when the legislature is passing these laws without fully investigating the actual cost of insurance or medical expenses, it's really not fair to the consumer. One of the things that was interesting when we attended the hearings on this issue is that the battle cry for reducing the limits back to $25,000 was that people couldn't afford it. But as you correctly indicated, the evidence really doesn't suggest that. There are several national websites, insurance websites actually, that rate premiums across the United States. And in 2010, when the increased limits were in effect, actually Wisconsin was the fourth lowest state for premiums in the United States.
I tell my clients and my friends and my family the most important coverages that they should have on their car policy are, first of all, MedPay. It's the cheapest health insurance you can get. And underinsured motorist coverage, because that protects the people in your car, most likely your family, no matter how responsible a person in the other car was. Do you agree?
Absolutely. And we can talk a little bit later about, what the changes now that the legislature is proposing and will pass does is it puts more of a burden on Wisconsin consumers to not only understand these sometimes very complicated insurance policies, but to have their agent explain to them exactly what coverages they're purchasing and what they're going to get out of it. But you're exactly right. Purchasing uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, along with selecting the appropriate level of medical payments coverage, is now more important than it has ever been, especially with the new law changes that are going to be in place. And it's significantly problematic because the legislature is proposing changes that allow insurance companies, George, to define certain aspects of this coverage, which are very, very difficult to understand.
Hold that thought. We are going to take another break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you about the burden that this puts on the insurance agent and how important that agent is to you and your protection.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.